Hey guys, tonight we slip into a world of rattling wheels, smoky skies, and desperate footsteps. You find yourself walking beside cold steel rails under a swollen moon, your boots kicking gravel as the sound of distant whistles hums like some ghostly lullaby. The night air is sharp enough to sting your lungs, and the smell of creosote from the wooden ties lingers heavy, almost medicinal. You feel the vibration before you hear the train, like a beast stirring in its sleep, and for a moment your body tenses as if you might leap aboard. Then you realize you have no ticket, no coin, and absolutely no plan beyond keeping your stomach from eating itself. Welcome to the Great Depression. You probably won't survive this. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, tell me in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is there. I love knowing which part of the world is yawning along with me. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge forward, head down, shoulders wrapped in a coat that has seen better centuries, not just years. The ground beneath you is uneven, little stones cutting into the thin soles of your boots. Every crunch underfoot echoes far louder than you expect because the silence of this rural night is almost supernatural. You're walking through the backbone of America at its lowest point, and each breath feels like it carries someone else's sorrow. The rails stretch endlessly into the dark, twin lines of silver gleaming with dew. They vanish at the horizon like a promise you can't quite cash in. The rhythm of walking, step, step, crunch, becomes hypnotic and your mind starts to wander. Maybe you picture yourself as some medieval pilgrim, though instead of Canterbury, you heading toward a soup kitchen in Omaha. Funny how desperation makes you creative. Historical fact, during the early 1930s, thousands of men and some women really did ride and walk along these tracks, moving from one town to the next in search of food, work, or even just a kind word. The railroad was both lifeline and death trap, carrying hope in its freight cars but guarded by merciless yard bulls. The night fog thickens, crawling low over the grass, and you pull your coat tighter. Somewhere in the distance, an owl hoots, though in your imagination it sounds more like it's laughing at your empty stomach. The rails sing faintly with the weight of an approaching train, and your heart kicks up. You could try to hop aboard, but you've heard stories. Men losing legs, men crushed beneath iron wheels, men vanishing into the blackness. Historians still argue whether the hobo culture should be seen as heroic resilience or reckless desperation. Tonight, standing there, you feel like both interpretations might be right. You stop for a moment at a little wooden bridge where the rails cross a creek. The water beneath glimmers in moonlight, sluggish and dark, as if even the river can't find energy to hurry. You crouch and dip your hands into it, splashing your face. It's cold enough to make your teeth ache, but it clears your head. A fringe tidbit. Hobos often carried little tin cups or makeshift cans, not just for soup lines, but to scoop river water, boil coffee grounds, or cook whatever scraps they could find. Yours rattles at your belt, dented and blackened by 100 failed fires. Back on your feet, you keep walking. Gravel turns into packed dirt, and the rails take you past silhouettes of barns. Some are boarded shut, others sagging like old men. You imagine the lives inside, families worrying over mortgage payments, mothers stretching a bag of flour to last another week. Strange, isn't it? You, the outsider, feel both pity and envy. At least they have 4 walls and a roof, even if it's crumbling. As the train approaches from behind, you step off the track bed and into the grass. The whistle blasts, shattering the night, and you feel it in your chest more than your ears. The locomotive roars past like a dragon out of legend, fire in its belly, smoke billowing in a black cloud that tastes of soot. For a second you almost leap, hands twitch, feet tense, but then the freight cars blur by, each one faster than your courage. You let them thunder past, eyes watering from grit, heart hammering with both relief and regret. Your stomach growls loud enough that you actually chuckle, a joke for yourself. Congratulations, you've just invented the world's first one-man orchestra. Feet on gravel, stomach as drum, train as brass section. Not exactly Carnegie Hall, but hey, admission is free. The rails bend westward, and you follow. Stars overhead shine hard and clear, cold jewels scattered on black velvet. The Big Dipper leans overhead, and you remember some old-timers' advice. Follow it, and you'll never get lost. Easier said than done when clouds roll in, but tonight at least you have cosmic company. Your mind drifts again. You wonder about the others who walked here before you, their names swallowed by time. Maybe one carved a mark into a fence post nearby. Maybe one leaned on the same milepost, cursing the same hunger. You're not alone. You're part of a moving tribe that no census will ever count properly. Scholars debate how many hobos actually roamed the nation. Some say hundreds of thousands, others argue millions. The truth probably lies somewhere in between, just like most truths. A gust of wind whistles through the telegraph wires strung beside the tracks, turning them into eerie instruments. The sound rises and falls like some strange choir. You listen, half convinced the wires are whispering advice. Keep moving, don't stop. Tomorrow might be better. Or maybe the fondue. Yeah, mocking you. Hard to tell at 2 a.m. with nothing in your belly but river water. You pass a signal tower, its lanterns glowing red and green. The wooden structure creaks in the wind, and you imagine it as a watchtower guarding a forbidden kingdom. Wouldn't surprise you if a guard leaned out and ordered you back, but the cabin stays empty, only the light keeping silent vigil. Another hour of walking and your legs ache. You sit at last on a splintered crate someone has abandoned near the tracks. It smells faintly of apples, long gone. You close your eyes just for a second, and the hum of the rails becomes lullaby. You know better than to fall asleep here, too dangerous, too exposed, but your body begs. The compromise is a short rest, ears tuned for any sign of footsteps or boots on gravel. Somewhere in the darkness, another traveller whistles a tune. It drifts over the field, a sad little melody that might once have been cheerful. You smile despite yourself. Even now, even here, music finds a way. You wonder who that stranger is and whether you'll meet them tomorrow or never. The moon begins to sink, sky paling just enough to hint at dawn. You rise, bones stiff, and keep walking, because what else can you do? The rails promise nothing, but they also refuse to end. And maybe, just maybe, the next bend hides a campfire, or a soup line, or even a smile. You walk toward that possibility, no matter how faint. You shuffle along the tracks until the faint orange smear of dawn spreads across the horizon. The sun rises grudgingly, as if even it feels weary in these lean years. With the new light comes the sight of a sprawling cluster of shacks and lean-tos just beyond the edge of town. From a distance, it looks like a child's scattered toy blocks. Up close, it's more like a cardboard kingdom. You've stumbled upon one of the infamous Hoovervilles, shanty towns named sarcastically after the president people blamed for the Depression. The smell reaches you first, wood smoke mixed with frying onions, mingled with the sharp tang of unwashed clothes. Your feet crunch into the frozen mud between rows of patched-together shelters. Some are crafted from wooden crates nailed at odd angles, others from flattened tin sheets scavenged from junkyards, and still others stitched together from old blankets, burlap, and cardboard. Every wall tells a story of its builder's desperation and determination. A boy in a teal rag of a shirt drags a battered wagon filled with sticks past you. He doesn't speak, just gives you a quick glance that says, "I know you, stranger, because you're like us." His wagon squeaks a steady beat as he vanishes between huts. Mainstream historical fact: Hoovervilles cropped up in almost every major American city during the Depression, from New York's Central Park to the banks of the Willamette River in Portland. They were often tolerated because authorities simply couldn't house so many displaced families. Here, on the outskirts of your fictional town, the settlement stretches farther than you can see, a sprawl of poverty stitched together by community spirit. You pass a shack with smoke curling out of a crooked stovepipe. Inside, a woman in a russet skirt stirs something in a dented iron pot. The smell is modest, just cabbage, potatoes, maybe a sliver of salt pork if she's lucky, but your stomach growls so loudly you're embarrassed. She glances at you through a gap in the wall, and for a moment you expect her to shoo you away. Instead, she nods slightly, like a queen acknowledging a visiting knight. You nod back and keep walking. Everywhere you look, life is being carved out of scraps. Men hammer boards scavenged from shipping crates, trying to keep the cold out. Children chase one another through muddy alleys, their laughter surprisingly bright against the bleakness. One little girl wears a paper crown coloured with charcoal. Her kingdom might be made of cardboard, but she reigns over it anyway. A quirky tidbit: in some Hoovervilles, residents established mock governments, electing mayors or passing their own rules about sanitation and disputes. You imagine one of these cardboard kings issuing decrees about who gets to use the community water barrel first. It sounds absurd, but it's also proof of how humans, no matter how stripped down, keep rebuilding structure. You round a corner and stumble onto a makeshift square where several families have pooled their resources. A fire burns in the center, flames flickering against faces lined with fatigue. An old man in indigo rags pokes the fire with iron tongs, his motions methodical. Around him, people are cooking bits of food. A scrap of meat here, a pot of beans there. They chat softly, the tone less about celebration and more about reassurance. We are still here, we are still together. Historians still argue whether Hoovervilles represented resilience or surrender. Were they ingenious self-help communities or symbols of a government failing its people? Standing here, you realize both interpretations might be right. The shacks are flimsy, the hunger is real, but so is the sense of solidarity. A child runs up to you suddenly, holding out a chipped mug. "Coffee?" she asks, though you can smell. It's more like burnt barley water. You accept, sip, and nod your thanks. It tastes bitter, but also strangely comforting. She beams as if she's offered you liquid gold. You wander deeper into the cardboard labyrinth. A man has set up what looks like a barber's chair, really just a wooden crate with a blanket thrown over it. He's trimming another man's beard with rusty scissors, the client holding a shard of mirror to inspect the progress. Around them, 3 boys watch with awe, like it's a theatrical performance. You chuckle quietly, thinking even in the depths of poverty, vanity survives. Another corner reveals a makeshift chapel. It's nothing more than a lean-to with a wooden cross hammered together from fence posts, but inside, voices hum a hymn. The melody drifts out into the alley, plaintive and sweet. You don't recognize the tune, but it lingers in your chest like a warm coal. Your eyes catch on little details. A wicker basket used to store kindling, an old tin sign hammered into a roof patch, a line of laundry strung with shirts in every colour: indigo, saffron, russet, teal. The wind lifts them like banners, as if announcing the endurance of their wearers. 3 light jokes creep into your mind to keep the mood from drowning you. First, when you see a man proudly displaying a rickety chair he's made from mismatched planks, you think, "Congratulations, sir, You've just invented IKEA 60 years too early. Then, watching two boys kick around a ball made of rags, you murmur, "Who needs the World Cup? This is the Hooverville Premier League." Finally, spotting a shack with a sign scrawled Hotel de Nowhere, you can't resist. 5 stars on Yelp, if Yelp had been invented by rats. The sun climbs higher, lighting up the shacks in golden hues that make them almost picturesque. Almost. Shadows still pool in corners where hunger waits. You overhear a group of men discussing where to head next. Maybe there's work in the orchards, maybe a factory reopened, maybe nowhere. Their words are full of maybe. The Depression was a nation of maybes. You pause at the edge of the settlement. Behind you is the buzz of makeshift life. Ahead, the uncertain sprawl of rails and road. You realize something. These cardboard kingdoms are both prison and sanctuary. They trap their residents in poverty, yet they shelter them from worse dangers. You're free to leave, but you carry with you the image of that paper-crowned girl, laughing as though cardboard walls could never fall. The path forward feels heavier now. You're not just one drifter. You're carrying all of them, their jokes, their hunger, their tiny flashes of dignity. The rails call again, promising another town, another chance, another soup line. But part of you knows you'll never forget this makeshift city of scraps and souls. You leave the cardboard kingdom behind, but its sounds and smells cling to you like smoke in your hair. The tracks curve gently toward town, and soon you see a river of people snaking along the sidewalk. Men in patched coats, women clutching children, old veterans with empty eyes, all waiting in the bitter morning air. The soup line stretches farther than you can see, curling around a corner and disappearing into the distance. You step into the queue, sliding in behind a man whose shoes are more holes than leather. The shuffling rhythm is hypnotic. A slow drag forward, a cough here, a mutter there. Everyone stares ahead, faces blank, as if the only thing they can think about is the thin broth waiting at the front. You fold your arms against your chest, trying to trap what little warmth your coat still holds. Mainstream historical fact: soup kitchens became a hallmark of the Depression, often run by charities, churches, or individuals. The most famous was set up by gangster Al Capone in Chicago, where thousands of men were fed daily. Historians still argue whether his generosity was altruism or simply clever public relations. Standing in this line, though, nobody cares about motives, just that a bowl might appear in their hands. The air smells faintly of onions, cabbage, and something smoky. It makes your stomach clench with both hunger and impatience. A woman ahead of you distracts her toddler by telling jokes. "Why did the chicken cross the road?" she asks softly. The boy shrugs. "Because the rent was cheaper on the other side." The joke is weak, but the child giggles anyway, and you smile despite yourself. A quirky tidbit: some soup lines didn't serve soup at all. Instead, they offered thick slices of bread with drippings or even spaghetti when donors could manage it. In New York, one kitchen became famous for handing out hot potatoes wrapped in paper so men could warm their hands before eating. You imagine holding such a potato now, steam curling up, fingers thawing from the cold. The line inches forward. To your right, a man in a saffron scarf begins humming a tune. Within minutes, others pick it up, soft voices weaving into a low, steady song. It isn't joyful, but it isn't sorrowful either. It's something in between, the sound of survival. You join in, your voice rusty but blending with the chorus. For a few breaths, hunger feels less lonely. You shuffle again, and now you're close enough to see the volunteers ladling soup from a giant iron cauldron. Steam curls into the frosty air, creating halos around their heads. They move quickly, their hands a blur. Dip, pour, hand over, dip, pour, hand over. Each bowl is identical, watery broth with maybe a carrot slice, a sliver of potato, or, if fortune smiles, a scrap of meat. Your turn arrives. The volunteer, a young man with indigo sleeves rolled to the elbow, doesn't meet your eyes. He just dips the ladle, fills your dented tin cup, and slides a crust of bread onto the rim. Next, he calls. The transaction is swift, impersonal, but your heart still lifts. Warmth in your hands, however thin, feels like a miracle. You step aside, balancing the cup carefully. The steam rises and you blow across the surface before taking a sip. It scalds your tongue, but you don't care. The taste is simple. Onion, water, salt, but your body doesn't argue. The bread is dry and hard, but when you dunk it in the broth, it softens into something almost delicious. You find a spot against the wall to eat, and from here you can watch the line continue. It doesn't shrink. For every person served, 2 more seem to appear. You realize you could stay here all day and the cauldron would never seem empty. The depression is feeding itself on hope diluted like soup. You overhear conversations around you. A group of men wonder aloud if there's work at the rail yard. Another speaks of California orchards where the fruit hangs heavy enough to feed us all. Someone scoffs, "Yeah, if you can get there alive." Historians still argue whether these migrations were acts of courage or desperation. Again, you suspect both. Nearby, a boy sits cross-legged with his soup untouched. He's fiddling with a harmonica, trying to coax out a tune. It's clumsy, squeaky, but determined. A light joke bubbles in your head. If music is food for the soul, this kid just burned dinner. Yet somehow the squeaks turn into something almost melodic, and you nod along. As you sip, you notice how people trade news in whispers. There's a kitchen down on 3rd Street giving out beans tonight. A church uptown has blankets. Railroad bulls are cracking down harder. The line is not just for food, it's for information, for a thread of survival tips. A man leans near you, cradling his bowl. His beard is frost-dusted, his eyes tired but not cruel. "First line today?" he asks. You nod. He chuckles, low and rough. "Better get used to it. Lines are all we got left. Lines for food, lines for jobs, lines for nothing." He slurps and walks away, leaving you with the echo of his words. You finish your soup slowly, stretching every bite. When it's gone, you scrape the last streaks of broth with your bread crust, then lick your fingers. Nothing is wasted. Hunger makes saints out of scavengers. Another joke slips into your mind. Michelin chefs talk about reducing sauces. Well, congrats. Atulations, you've reduced onion water down to the flavor of, "Please, sir, may I have another?" The laugh is tired but real, and you carry it with you as you set the empty cup back into your pack. The crowd around the kitchen grows restless as the cauldron level dips lower. Volunteers move faster, their arms aching, their faces tight. You slip away before the line breaks into shouting. Better to vanish with a warm belly than risk staying to watch tempers flare. As you walk, the sounds of the soup line fade behind you. The murmurs, the clatter of bowls, the smell of steam, they all fold back into silence. Ahead, the rails gleam faintly in midday sun, beckoning again. You sigh, pat your stomach and step forward. One line ends, another begins. The world doesn't feel any less harsh, but the memory of that hot broth lingers. It's astonishing how survival can come in spoonfuls, how dignity can fit inside a dented cup. You walk lighter now, because sometimes one meal is enough to carry you through the next few miles of gravel and steel. The soup line fades into memory, replaced once more by the steady crunch of gravel underfoot and the whisper of the rails leading you onward. But tonight, something peculiar catches your eye. As you pass along a weathered wooden fence, you notice chalk marks, strange symbols drawn quickly like secret hieroglyphs, circles, arrows, crosses, squiggly lines. At first you think children were playing, but then you notice how deliberate they seem, tucked into corners, drawn at different heights as though speaking to those who know how to read them. You crouch closer, tracing your finger along one chalked triangle. The line feels rough against the wood, grain splintering beneath your fingertip. You lean back and smile. You've stumbled into the invisible language of hobos, their secret code of survival. Mainstream historical fact: during the Great Depression, hobos developed a system of chalk marks and carvings to communicate with one another. These marks told where to find food, which houses offered kindness, and which towns to avoid altogether. It was an improvised network of information long before smartphones or GPS. This particular fence carries several marks. A circle with 2 slashes means police not friendly. A cat-like symbol, just a pair of sharp ears, warns that a mean dog lives nearby. And just below, a simple smiling face indicates that the family here might offer a meal if you knock politely. You chuckle to yourself. Imagine future archaeologists puzzling over these, debating whether they were religious symbols or just graffiti. Historians still argue whether the hobo code was standardized or improvised. Some say there were agreed-upon rules, others insist each region adapted its own variations. Either way, to the hungry drifter, they were a lifeline. As you move along the alley, you find more of these chalk messages. One shack has a small arrow pointing upwards. "Guard" scrawled near the door, probably a sign that someone once gave out bread here. Another fence post carries an X with a looping tail, which an old-timer once told you means safe camp nearby. It feels almost like a treasure map. A quirky tidbit: some hobos would carry small lumps of chalk or bits of soapstone specifically for leaving these marks. Others improvised with charcoal from campfires or even scratches made with nails. Imagine a wandering artist, cloak stained with soot, carefully sketching a crude symbol so that the next lost soul might avoid a beating or find a crust of bread. That's art serving the stomach. As you walk, your imagination runs wild. You see the chalk marks glowing faintly in the moonlight like enchanted runes, guiding wanderers as surely as the North Star. You picture hobos as medieval pilgrims, passing wisdom down through symbols rather than sermons. A mark for mercy, a mark for danger, each one an echo of lives brushing against yours without ever meeting. You stop before a tall fence with a heart-shaped symbol. Your chest tightens, not from hunger but from something softer. Does it mean friendly woman lives here? Or maybe just kindness found? You don't know for certain, but it makes you pause. You remember stories of farm wives who would leave sandwiches wrapped in paper on back steps for wanderers, a crust of bread given without question. Sometimes kindness itself is the meal. Your feet keep moving, but your eyes scan constantly now, searching for signs. Each mark feels like a message written directly to you across time and space. It's a reminder you're not alone in this journey. Others have walked, suffered, laughed, and left breadcrumbs, chalk crumbs for you to follow. 3 light jokes bubble up because you can't help yourself. First, staring at a particularly messy scrawl, you grin. Congratulations, you've discovered the original Yelp review system. 1 star, angry dog. 5 stars, free soup and pie. Next, spotting 2 overlapping symbols, you murmur, "Looks like even hobos had to deal with bad handwriting. Was that a warning about police or just someone doodling a chicken?" Finally, when you notice a mark shaped vaguely like a $sign, you chuckle. Oh great, even in poverty, inflation shows up. The night grows colder, and the chalk marks begin to blur in the dew. You imagine countless boots trudging past, countless eyes scanning fences by lantern light. There's a camaraderie here, even if you never see another soul. The marks speak for them. You wander past a barn with a half-broken door. On the post, someone has scratched a rough star. You pause, tilting your head. Maybe it means safe to sleep. Maybe it means watch for owls. Historians might bicker forever, but your aching legs translate it into a bed invitation. You slip inside. The barn is drafty, hay scattered thinly on the ground. You lie down anyway, grateful for a roof. Your eyes trace the rafters above, where spiders weave webs that glisten faintly in moonlight. You pull your coat around you, remembering that chalk-marked star, and you feel oddly safe, as though some long-gone wanderer reached across time to tuck you in. Sleep comes, ragged but real. You dream of chalk symbols dancing in rows, like constellations on the sky. Circles, arrows, hearts, stars, all forming a map of kindness across a hungry nation. You wake hours later to the sound of roosters, and for a moment you think you've read the stars correctly. You rise, stretch, and step outside. The morning sun glints off the fence post where the chalk star waits. It looks faint now, almost erased by dew and wind. But you smile at it anyway. A stranger's whisper carried across years still has power. And with that you're on the rails again, eyes open for the next sign, ears tuned for the next train, heart braced for the next uncertain gift. The barn fades into the distance behind you as the day warms, but the chalk star you slept beneath lingers in your memory like a talisman. The rails beckon again, shimmering faintly in the noon sun, and your footsteps fall into rhythm with the quiet hum of the countryside. For a few blissful moments the world seems almost peaceful. That illusion doesn't last long. You hear it first. The low metallic growl of a train engine straining against its load. The sound rises steady as a heartbeat, then you see it, smoke billowing on the horizon, a black plume against a pale blue sky. The locomotive bursts into view, a steel beast charging forward, dragging a chain of cars like armored knights in formation. Your stomach clenches because you know what comes next. The dangerous ballet of trying to ride the steel beasts. Mainstream historical fact: thousands of hobos rode the rails during the Depression, hopping onto moving freight trains to travel across the country. It was dangerous. Many lost limbs or lives, but it was also free. Historians still argue whether riding the rails was an act of freedom or sheer recklessness, but for the desperate it was often the only ticket available. You crouch by the embankment, heart hammering as the train thunders closer. Dust rises from the gravel, stinging your eyes, and the roar grows until it drowns out thought itself. Then the freight cars are upon you, massive, iron-sided, each one rattling like thunder. Your fingers twitch, your boots press hard into the dirt. Timing is everything. You lunge. Your hands grab the cold iron rung of a ladder bolted to the side of a boxcar. For an instant your feet drag across the stones, sparks flying where the heels scrape. Your breath catches, but you haul yourself upward, chest slamming into the side of the car. With a grunt and a prayer, you pull your legs up and cling tight as the ground blurs beneath you. You've done it. Wind whips your face, icy and sharp, carrying soot that grits your teeth. The world flashes past, fields, barns, telegraph poles whipping by like sentinels. You cling to the ladder, laughing and coughing at the same time. The fear melts into exhilaration. For once, you're not trudging, you're flying. A quirky tidbit: some hobos had nicknames for each train they favoured, calling them red rattlers or coal dragons. To them, every locomotive was more than machine. It was a companion, a rival, a fickle god. You feel that truth now as you grip the steel, whispering to the beast like it might actually hear you. Don't throw me off, not yet. You climb higher onto the narrow ledge at the end of the boxcar. It's barely wide enough for your boots, but it gives you a view. The entire train stretching forward in an endless chain, smoke pouring from the engine like dragon's breath. Behind you, the rails twist back toward the horizon, a shining thread unspooling into eternity. The rhythm of the wheels on track is hypnotic, clack, 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 clack. It feels like a heartbeat not just of the train, but of the whole era, pounding, relentless, unforgiving. You settle into it, feeling your own heart sink to the rhythm, your body swaying with each turn. But danger is always present. You glance down and see the wheels spinning furiously beneath you, inches from your boots. The thought alone makes your palms sweat. You force yourself to look away, eyes fixed on the horizon. Historians still argue whether this constant risk bonded hobos into a kind of brotherhood, or whether it simply thinned the herd of the unlucky. Either way, you're learning the answer firsthand. Survival is the only initiation. You inch along the ledge to the door of the boxcar. It's chained shut, but loose enough that you can squeeze inside. You slip through, dropping into the dark cavern of the car. Dust motes swirl in the slats of sunlight cutting through cracks. The floor rattles beneath you, shaking your bones. At first you think you're alone, then you hear it, the faint sound of someone humming. In the far corner, a man sits with knees drawn up, cloak wrapped tight around him. His beard is streaked with grey and his eyes gleam when he notices you. "First ride?" he shouts over the roar. You nod, breathless. He grins, showing missing teeth. "Don't worry, the beast only bucks the ones who doubt it. Hold fast and she'll carry you." You settle across from him, gripping the wall as the train jerks. For a while you ride in silence, just two souls cradled in the belly of iron. Then he pulls out a small bundle wrapped in cloth. Inside, half a loaf of bread, stale but real. He breaks it in half, tossing you a piece without ceremony. You catch it, startled. "Eat," he says simply. You do. The bread is dry as dust, but hunger makes it a feast. 3 light jokes bubble into your thoughts, keeping fear at bay. First, as the boxcar jolts, you think, "Congratulations, you've just signed up for the world's bumpiest Uber." Then, noticing the stale bread, you mutter, "5-star dining comes with complimentary tooth-breaking." Finally, as the man hums again, off-key, you grin. Free live music included in your train fare. Beats Spotify. Hours blur. The train rattles through farmland, through woods, through small towns that flash past like postcards. You catch glimpses of children waving, dogs barking, farmers pausing mid-plough to watch the steel monster thunder by. Each face is a reminder. Life continues, even when yours feels suspended. The old man dozes off, head bobbing with each sway. You stay awake, heart thrumming with the rails. You think about all the other riders hidden in other boxcars, dozens, maybe hundreds, carried across the country like seeds scattered by the wind. Each one has their story, their hunger, their chalk marks left behind. Night falls again. The air grows colder, seeping into the car until your breath frosts. You huddle into your coat, trying to remember warmth. Outside, stars prick the sky, but they blur quickly as the train hurtles on. You listen to the wheels, the heartbeat of the beast, and you wonder where it's carrying you. Toward work? Toward another soup line? Toward nothing? Historians still debate whether hobos saw the rails as freedom or trap. You can't decide. Right now, clinging to iron in the middle of nowhere, you feel both, free as wind, chained as steel. Maybe that's the truth. Life itself is both. The train howls into the night, carrying you forward, and for once you don't feel like you're chasing hope. You feel like you're riding it. The train clatters on through the night, but by dawn the rhythm slows, the beast sighs, brakes shrieking, and the boxcar lurches to a halt. You and the grey-bearded rider wait until the world outside settles into silence. Then, wordlessly, he tips his head toward the door. You nod back, squeeze through the loosened chain, and leap into the gravel. The old man follows, landing with surprising agility for someone whose joints surely creak more than the train itself. Without another word, he melts into the tree line, a ghost vanishing the way hobos often do. You turn in the opposite direction, following the faint smell of smoke. Soon you find yourself descending a dirt path toward the riverbank. Here, a hidden settlement sprawls like a secret carnival. tucked just out of sight from the town above. Ragged tents lean together, patched with burlap and canvas. Fires crackle in pits dug carefully to avoid notice. Tin cans and dented pots hang from makeshift tripods. This is no ordinary camp. It's a hobo jungle. Mainstream historical fact. Hobo jungles were temporary camps set up along rivers, railroad yards, or under bridges. They provided a gathering place for drifters to share food, swap stories, and rest before catching the next train. Many jungles had unwritten rules about cleanliness and conduct enforced by the community itself. You step cautiously into the clearing, but the scent of wood smoke and beans over fire softens your nerves. A group of men sits cross-legged around one fire, trading jokes while poking at a pan of bubbling stew. Another group hauls water from the river in wooden buckets, their laughter ringing out across the camp. Children chase each other barefoot in the mud, their laughter shrill but strangely comforting. A man in a russet shirt notices you, lifts his hand in greeting. "Plenty of room by the fire," he says. You nod, grateful, and settle onto a log beside them. The warmth seeps through your bones, chasing away the chill from the train ride. Someone ladles stew into a tin cup and passes it your way. You raise it to your lips. The broth is thin, but the flavor, beans, onions, maybe a hint of pork, is heavenly after days of scraps. A quirky tidbit. Some hobo jungles had kitchen kings, self-appointed chefs who oversaw meals cooked from whatever scraps were pooled together. These cooks often guarded their pots fiercely, claiming the role came with honor and responsibility. The man stirring this stew seems to fit the role, wielding his iron ladle like a knight's sword. The fire crackles and the talk drifts from town rumors to stories of near escapes. One man describes leaping from a moving train into a haystack, laughing as he mimics the tumble. Another brags about sweet-talking a farmer's wife into handing over an entire apple pie. Someone else mutters about railroad bulls breaking bones with clubs. You listen, half entertained, half unsettled. Historians still argue whether these jungles represented community or chaos. Were they proto-democracies of the downtrodden or magnets for crime and misery? You can feel both truths sitting here. On one hand, laughter and warmth. On the other, hunger, desperation, and a constant undercurrent of danger. The stew warms you enough to notice other details. A fiddler tunes his instrument near another fire, plucking notes that scatter like sparks. A harmonica joins in, the two weaving together a tune that rises above the camp's chatter. Soon, a dozen voices hum along. You close your eyes, letting the music and fire lull you. For a moment, you almost forget the depression. Then reality reminds you with a gust of wind carrying the stink of the river, muddy, fishy, and faintly sour with waste. You shift, glancing toward the water, where a row of shirts flaps from a line strung between willows. Laundry done with harsh lye soap, already stiff in the breeze. Beside the river, a man with teal suspenders scrubs at a shirt so vigorously you wonder if he's trying to erase the decade itself. 3 light jokes pop into your head because even among hunger and smoke, humor finds a way. First, as you slurp stew with questionable chunks, you think, congratulations, you've just invented Depression-era ramen minus the seasoning packet. Second, watching the fiddler and harmonica duel, you grin, who needs Spotify when you've got Spitify? Third, glancing at the laundry line, you mutter under your breath, Paris runway. No, but behold the latest in Hooverville haute couture. The sky dims as the sun drifts west, painting the river in orange fire. Shadows lengthen and the camp grows more relaxed. People stretch out by fires, bellies fuller than usual, voices mellow. You lean back, coat pulled tight, and let the warmth sink in. For the first time in days, you feel part of something larger. But danger never fully sleeps. As twilight deepens, two men shuffle into camp, muttering about a railroad bull spotted nearby. The murmurs ripple quickly. Everyone here knows what that means. The bulls, private railroad police, are infamous for brutality. They break up camps, beat riders, and toss anyone caught trespassing into jail. The fiddler stops mid-note. Conversations hush. Fires are banked low. Yet even in the hush, community pulses. A lookout is posted at the edge of camp. Quiet conversations resume, softer now, but steady. You realize that while fear stalks this jungle, fellowship shields it. Nobody here has $1 to their name, but they share stew, music, and mez, and warnings like treasure. Historians debate whether jungles deserve to be romanticized as havens of brotherhood, or condemned as nests of vagrancy. Sitting here, with firelight flickering across faces lined with hardship but softened by laughter, you feel the truth leaning toward both. These places were messy, dirty, and often dangerous, but they were also human. The fiddler resumes, softer now, a lullaby for the weary. You sip the last of your stew, dregs thick and salty, and sigh. The river gurgles, the wind hums, the stars blink awake overhead. The cardboard kingdoms of town are one kind of survival. These riverbank camps are another. You lie back on the log, staring up through the willows. Smoke curls into the night, carrying the smell of beans, wood, and sweat. Your eyes grow heavy, lulled by the rhythm of the rails echoing faintly in your memory. Tomorrow you'll move again. Tonight you let the jungle hold you. Dawn creeps over the riverbank like a lazy painter, spilling grey light into the hobo jungle. The camp stirs. Men cough, stretch, and poke at the embers of dying fires. The stew pot sits empty, scraped clean by spoons that refuse to waste a drop. You rub the sleep from your eyes and prepare to move on, but before you can slip away, a low warning ripple passes through the camp like wind rustling through reeds. Bulls. Mainstream historical fact. Bulls were railroad police hired to patrol yards and keep hobos off trains. Some were fair, most were feared, and a few were outright brutal. Clubs, fists, and boots were their tools. Arrests were possible, but beatings were more common. Historians still argue whether they maintained order or simply enforced cruelty. To a wanderer like you, they're predators, and you are prey. The lookout at the edge of camp hisses. They're coming down the track. Instantly, the jungle shifts from a warm fellowship to tense survival. Fires are smothered, blankets rolled tight. Men scatter into the trees like startled birds. You grab your coat and scramble, heart hammering. Through the willows you see them, two bulls in indigo uniforms, thick sticks clutched in their fists. They walk with the heavy confidence of men who own the ground beneath their boots. Their eyes scan the camp, jaws tight. One spits into the dirt. "Smells like rats," he growls. The other chuckles, swinging his club idly. You crouch low, trying to blend into shadow. The bulls kick at an abandoned kettle, sending it clattering across the dirt. A tent collapses under the force, spilling rags into the open. "Move along, you ghosts!" one bellows, though no one answers. The camp has already scattered, silence now louder than laughter. Your pulse pounds in your ears. You inch backward, careful not to snap a twig. Quirky tidbit, some hobos claimed they could hear the bulls. Coming before anyone else, swearing the earth itself vibrated with their boots. You're not sure about that, but right now, every crunch of gravel under their heels sounds like thunder. The bulls move closer. You see their clubs clearly now, polished from years of swinging. You think about the stories you've heard. Broken ribs, shattered teeth, hobos dumped unconscious in ditches. Historians still debate whether those tales were exaggerated. Right now, your instincts scream they weren't. A sudden shout erupts behind the bulls. A young man in teal, too reckless or too brave, dashes from the trees, sprinting toward the river. "There!" a bull roars, charging after him. The second follows, both clubs raised. You seize the moment, bolting in the opposite direction. Branches whip your face, mud sucks at your boots, but you run harder than you ever have. 3 light jokes slip through your mind, absurd but necessary to keep panic from swallowing you. First, congratulations, you're now in the Great Depression Olympics. Event 1, sprinting through mud with empty pockets. Second, as you stumble and nearly fall, you think, 10 points for style, minus 15 for grace. Third, the thought of bulls chasing you makes you grin bitterly. At least they're not the Spanish kind, or you'd be skewered instead of clubbed. You burst from the trees into open fields. The town looms in the distance, roofs glinting in the weak sun. Behind you, the shouts fade. Either the bulls lost interest or the young man drew them farther away. You collapse into the grass, chest heaving, sweat chilling on your back. Lying there, you realize something. The bulls aren't just guards, they're symbols. They represent the line between society and survival, between order and desperation. To the townsfolk, they're protectors. To you, they're wolves guarding the sheep from the starving dogs. Both sides need them, both sides hate them. You sit up, scanning the horizon. The hobo jungle is already invisible behind you, swallowed by trees and silence. You wonder if the young man escaped, if the bulls returned empty-handed, if the camp will rebuild tonight. Probably yes to all 3. That's the way of jungles. They vanish and reappear like ghosts, stubborn as weeds. You dust yourself off and start walking again. Every step feels heavier, not from exhaustion but from the weight of the encounter. It's one thing to dodge hunger, it's another to dodge clubs. The rails promise freedom, but freedom has guards with batons. Your boots crunch on the gravel as you return to the tracks. A whistle echoes faintly in the distance. Another train is coming, another chance, another gamble. But this time you hesitate. The thrill of riding steel beasts is still fresh in your veins, but so is the reminder that men with clubs stalk every yard. Historians still argue whether hobos respected or despised the bulls. Some accounts describe grudging admiration for their discipline. Others tell of seething hatred, entire jungles plotting revenge. You find yourself somewhere in between. You don't admire the bulls, but you understand them. They're as trapped by the depression as you are, paid to beat the hungry so their own stomachs don't go empty. The sun climbs higher, burning away the dew. You follow the tracks once more, but now your eyes scan constantly for chalk marks, for smoke from hidden camps, and most of all for shadows moving where they shouldn't. The bulls will always be out there, somewhere between your next mile and your next meal. You adjust your pack, sigh, and keep walking. Survival isn't about outrunning them forever. It's about knowing when to hide, when to run, and when to step lightly enough that even the sharpest ears won't hear your boots. And tonight, if you're lucky, maybe you'll find another fire, another circle of strangers who sound more like brothers than beggars. Your boots wear grooves into the gravel as you keep to the tracks, but eventually, hunger and curiosity tug you off the rails and back into the whispering trees. You've heard rumors whispered in soup lines. Certain camps aren't just places to eat and rest, but makeshift universities. Firelight classrooms, they say, where knowledge is passed like bread and wisdom is as common as beans. Tonight, you stumble upon one of them. The path winds into a clearing where logs and crates form a rough circle. A fire blazes in the center, sparks dancing upward like students raising their hands. Around the flames sit a dozen men and women, their faces half lit in amber glow, half shadowed in mystery. They lean in as though the flames themselves are speaking. But it isn't the fire, it's the man in the saffron coat standing tall with a stick in his hand like a teacher's pointer. Mainstream historical fact. Many hobos were surprisingly literate, even well-educated. Some were former teachers, veterans, or professionals ruined by the economic collapse. In hobo jungles, these individuals often shared their skills, reading aloud from salvaged newspapers, teaching basic arithmetic, or even giving lessons in philosophy and politics. The saffron-coated man taps his stick against the dirt. "Gentlemen, ladies," he declares in a voice more theatrical than weary, "we discuss tonight not beans or bread, but the balance of power. What good is a stomach full of stew if the world starves for justice?" Murmurs ripple around the circle. You slip onto a log, clutching your knees, and listen. He launches into a lesson on economics, quoting names like Marx and Jefferson in the same breath, weaving grand theories with biting sarcasm. His eyes gleam with firelight as he sketches imaginary graphs in the air. The crowd chuckles when he calls the stock market a great gambling hall where the dice are loaded, with greed. Even your empty belly forgets to grumble for a while. A quirky tidbit: some hobos called these gatherings hobo colleges or universities of the road. Lessons could range from carpentry tips to political rants, from poetry readings to practical jokes. One traveller might recite Shakespeare, while another explained how to fry dandelion greens without poisoning yourself. Tonight your classroom smells of smoke and beans, but the lecture tastes of ambition. The man pauses to sip from a dented flask, then waves toward the group. "What say you? Is poverty the fault of men or of systems?" Debate erupts. A young woman in teal raises her voice, insisting personal responsibility matters. An older man in russet counters that no one can swim when the river itself is poisoned. You listen, entranced, as ideas clash louder than any bull's club. Historians still argue whether hobo culture leaned anarchist, socialist, or simply pragmatic. The truth likely shifted from camp to camp. What you witness tonight feels less like ideology and more like survival wearing academic robes. Philosophy matters because it gives hungry men a reason to keep arguing instead of surrendering. The fire pops and the teacher grins. "Enough politics! Who here knows poetry?" A lanky fellow with an indigo scarf clears his throat and recites lines from Walt Whitman. His voice cracks but carries weight, and for a moment the jungle becomes a stage, the logs pews in a cathedral of smoke. 3 light jokes bounce into your mind as you watch. First, Harvard charges tuition. Here the entry fee is half a potato. Second, syllabus. 1. Don't die. 2. If you must, at least make it interesting. Third, as the teacher waves his stick dramatically, you think, tenure in this university lasts until your boots wear out. The lecture winds on, shifting into storytelling. A man tells of Shakespeare read by lantern in a boxcar, another of learning French phrases from a wandering veteran of the Great War. You marvel at how knowledge, like hunger, refuses to die. It adapts, squeezes itself into firesides and freight cars, demanding to be passed on. You shift on your log, feeling the heat of the fire on your shins. The smoke curls upward, carrying sparks into the starry sky. Each spark feels like an idea released into the night, tiny but bright, destined to drift wherever the wind carries it. Maybe some will die, maybe some will land, maybe some will ignite something larger. Historians still puzzle over how much of hobo storytelling was fact and how much was invention. Were these universities genuine educational gatherings or just tall tales magnified by nostalgia? You suspect, sitting here, that the line doesn't matter. Truth and myth both feed the soul just as beans and bread feed the body. The saffron-coated teacher concludes with a bow, earning applause that sounds more like rattling spoons against tin cups. "Class dismissed," he announces. Laughter ripples, some drift back to their tents, others linger, voices soft as lullabies. You stay seated, soaking in the warmth. Your belly isn't full, but your mind is buzzing. Ideas swirl: justice, survival, poetry, laughter. The fire crackles, the night hums, and you realize you found something rarer than food. You found proof that even stripped of comfort, humans still reach upward. As the camp quiets, you lie back on the grass. Stars shine down like lanterns hung from heaven's rafters. You let your eyes close, drifting off with Whitman's words still echoing. I am large, I contain multitudes. Tonight, you believe it. By morning, the hobo jungle hums with the smell of smoke and the clatter of tin spoons. You shuffle toward the fire where last night's professor now stirs a pot with a seriousness better suited to alchemy. The stew bubbles thickly, but today there isn't enough to go around. Hunger sharpens every eye in camp, and the murmurs sound like growls. You find yourself watching closely, almost hypnotized by each ladle stroke. Breakfast turns out to be more ceremony than feast. The pot yields only thin bean water, so scraps are shared from bundles. One man produces half an onion, another lays down a shriveled potato. Someone else offers bread crusts that crumble to dust at the edges. All are added into the bubbling pot like sacrifices to a hungry god. Mainstream historical fact: meals in hobo camps were often mulligans, a communal stew named after the practice of throwing in whatever ingredients were available. Some were hearty, others little more than flavored water. The mulligan today leans closer to water, but it still draws the camp together in ritual. A woman in teal unwraps a banana peel, browned and leathery. She slices it carefully into strips and drops them into the pot. You blink, startled. The professor notices your look and shrugs. Adds thickness, he says. Don't knock it till you've tried it. A quirky tidbit. Depression-era cookbooks really did include recipes using banana peels, boiled with sugar or fried for texture. You suddenly feel less like a diner and more like a participant in culinary archaeology. When the stew is served, the cup passed to you contains beans swollen to bursting, a floating onion peel, and a sliver of potato so thin it might be imaginary. You sip anyway. The broth scalds your tongue, onion tang sharp and smoky. Hunger turns it into ambrosia. The banana peel lends a strange chew, like rubber pretending to be meat. But you chew dutifully, pretending to savor. Historians still argue whether meals like this demonstrated resilience or just desperation dressed up as creativity. Sitting here, you taste both truths. The meal is laughable compared to what you once knew, but it is food, and it binds you to the circle. Across the fire, two men debate loudly about the stew. One claims it needs more salt, the other insists it lacks pepper. You chuckle inwardly. 3 light jokes slip easily into your thoughts. First, Gordon Ramsay would faint on the spot, but at least he'd faint full. Second, if Michelin ever rated meals by sheer determination, this stew would win 3 stars. Third, as you gnaw the banana peel, you mutter, "Congratulations, you're now eating the Depression's very first vegan leather." As the stew disappears, conversations spark. A man in russet tells of sneaking into a bakery dumpster and finding entire trays of burnt rolls. His voice turns reverent. "Best meal I ever had." Another laughs about fishing half-eaten apples from orchard ground, claiming worms just add protein. You shiver, both amused and unsettled. The morning sun rises, catching glints off tin cups and battered pots. The fire dies down, leaving behind grey ash. Men lick spoons clean, tuck them into pockets, and rise with weary groans. The meal is over, but the hunger remains, dulled, not defeated. You wander toward the edge of camp where a boy pokes at a separate pot. He grins, showing missing teeth. "Dessert," he announces proudly, pulling out a charred onion skin crisped or the fire. He bites it with exaggerated relish, making the nearby crowd laugh. The joke warms the camp more than the food itself. You take a piece when offered and chew. It tastes like burnt paper, but the boy's grin makes it almost sweet. Quirky inventions of hunger ripple through your thoughts. Recipes whispered around the fire, ketchup sandwiches, dandelion salads, cornbread made from cornmeal stretched with sawdust. Some sound like crimes against cuisine, others like desperate strokes of genius. You realize that in this world, creativity isn't a hobby, it's the only way to survive the next meal. Historians debate whether hobos romanticized these meals later, turning scraps into legend. Were they laughing at the time or only afterward, once their bellies were safe? You sip your last broth and decide it doesn't matter. In the moment you laugh because if you don't, you'll cry. Later, as the camp scatters, you walk the riverbank with your tin cup swinging at your side. Hunger still presses, but less cruelly than yesterday. Your body adjusts, learns to draw strength from thin broth and laughter. Your stomach is quieter, but your mind gnaws at thoughts. How much can a person endure before scraps become normal, before starvation feels like routine? 3 more jokes whisper into your tired brain, keeping despair at bay. First, the depression diet, lose weight fast whether you want to or not. Second, this mulligan stew has a secret ingredient, disappointment. Third, as you scrape onion peel from your teeth, you think, somewhere out there, a banana is naked and embarrassed. The sun climbs higher, birds wheel overhead, and the camp slowly empties into the woods. Men chase the rails, others vanish into town, some linger by the river for one more pot. You shoulder your coat, your cup rattling at your belt, and step back toward the tracks. Cardboard kingdoms gave you shelter, soup lines gave you warmth, chalk marks gave you guidance, trains gave you wings, the jungle gave you a lecture and a laugh. And now this patchwork meal, banana peel stew and onion crisp dessert, gives you something else, the memory that even hunger can be shared, and shared hunger is easier to swallow. The mulligan stew lingers in your stomach like a timid guest, but hunger quickly returns as you tramp back toward the tracks. By twilight, another settlement beckons, smaller than the jungle, tucked in a hollow beside a line of trees. Fires flicker here too, but the mood feels different. Instead of politics or stew, the air hums with melody. The sound draws you forward like a moth toward flame. You step into the clearing and find yourself in the middle of an impromptu concert. A man in a russet jacket perches on a crate, a battered fiddle tucked beneath his chin. His bow dances wildly, pulling notes sharp and mournful. Beside him, a boy in indigo blows into a harmonica, cheeks puffing, fingers tapping along in rhythm. The two weave a tune that's both ragged and beautiful, like silk stitched into burlap. Mainstream historical fact, music was a lifeline during the Depression. Songs of hardship, train rides, and wandering became the soundtrack of hobo life. Woody Guthrie, for example, wandered the rails and sang of dust storms, injustice and survival. His voice was only one among thousands. Around the fire, people clap in time, spoons rapping against tin cups. A woman in teal hums harmony, her voice threading gently under the fiddle's cry. Children stomp their bare feet in the dirt, giggling. You take a seat on a log, grinning despite yourself. Music transforms the camp from weary survival into something close to celebration. A quirky tidbit, many hobos carried harmonicas, calling them pocket pianos. Lightweight and cheap, they provided both entertainment and comfort on long rides. Some swore they could charm farmers into offering meals just by playing a tune on a doorstep. Looking at the boy tonight, you believe it. His harmonica squeaks in places, but the joy in his face erases every flaw. The fire throws shadows that leap like dancers on the canvas tents. Someone pulls out spoons and clacks them together, adding percussion. Another slaps his thigh in rhythm, turning his body into a drum. Soon the whole clearing pulses with sound. You clap along, your palms stinging, but your spirit lighter than it has been in weeks. Historians still argue whether such music gatherings were common or rare. Some accounts describe nightly concerts in every jungle. Others suggest they were rare sparks, romanticized by memory. Sitting here, you feel the answer. They were both. Rare enough to be precious, common enough to remind wanderers that beauty hadn't vanished entirely. The fiddleman closes his eyes, bow soaring across strings, and launches into a tune so fast you think sparks will leap from the wood. The harmonica chases him, squealing, tumbling, but never quite catching up. The camp bursts into laughter at the duel. You laugh too, stomach aching from the sound. 3 light jokes bubble in your head. First, who needs Carnegie Hall when you've got Campfire Carnegie? Second, as the harmonica squeals, you mutter, sounds like a goose trying to learn opera. Third, when the fiddler leans so far back his chair creaks, you grin. Well, either he's summoning angels or trying to break his own spine. The music softens into something gentler. The harmonica sighs, the fiddle croons. Voices join, low, rough but earnest. They sing a song of trains, steel beasts carrying them west, east, anywhere but here. The lyrics don't promise hope, but they promise motion, and motion itself feels like survival. You hum along, your voice trembling. The fire pops, sparks flying upward into the indigo night. You lean back, watching them fade into stars. The music continues, winding like smoke, weaving into your bones. For a moment you feel weightless, as if sound itself has lifted you off the ground. A young man beside you whispers, "Music keeps us human." His words hang in the air, truer than any lecture you've heard. Hunger gnaws, fear prowls, bulls stalk, but music refuses to vanish. It stitches dignity back into ragged seams. As the night deepens, the concert becomes a lullaby. The fiddle slows, bow gliding tenderly. The harmonica sighs like wind through reeds. Voices hush into murmurs. Children lean against mothers, eyes drooping. Even the fire seems to relax, flames shrinking into soft glow. Historians still debate whether music was escapism or resistance. Was it a way to forget hunger, or to declare life louder than hunger's silence? You feel the answer echo in your chest. It was both. Each note tonight is rebellion and reprieve, sorrow and celebration. When the last song fades, silence swells like a tide. No one claps this time. Instead, they sit in the quiet, savouring the aftertaste of melody. The fiddler lowers his bow with a sigh. The boy tucks his harmonica into his pocket with pride. You rise slowly, feeling as though your legs are lighter than air. 3 more jokes ripple through your weary mind as you shuffle toward your blanket. First, ticket price for tonight's concert. 1 potato peel and a smile. Second, encore, only if the stew pot sings along. Third, as the boy yawns so wide you think he'll swallow the harmonica, you grin. First musician ever to eat his own instrument. You stretch out under the stars, the music still echoing in your ears. Your stomach might be empty again, but your soul feels full. The rails wait for you tomorrow. The bulls still stalk, the hunger still prowls, but tonight, melody shields you like a second coat. The camp sinks into sleep, fire glowing low, the night hushed except for the faint hum of someone still plucking a tune on spoons. You drift off smiling, carried by rhythm instead of rails. Dawn scrapes its pale fingers across the sky, and you wake with music still echoing faintly in your ears. The fiddle and harmonica have long since gone silent, replaced now by the quieter orchestra of morning, the crackle of rekindled fires, the splash of water at the river, the coughs and groans of men dragging themselves from canvas shelters. Your stomach rumbles like an impatient drum, reminding you that songs can't fill bellies. You wander down the riverbank, tin cup swinging at your side, and find a group bent low among the weeds. At first you think they're simply too tired to stand, but then you notice wicker baskets at their feet and the careful way their fingers pluck green leaves and small berries from the ground, foraging, of course. Mainstream historical fact. Wild foraging was an essential survival tactic during the Depression. Hobos learned which plants were safe to eat, dandelion greens, lamb's quarters, cattail shoots, and which were deadly. Many learned from farmers, native communities, or simply trial and error. The countryside became both grocery store and minefield. One man holds up a handful of dandelion greens, shaking off the dew. Better than lettuce, he insists, though the others chuckle skeptically. A woman kneels nearby, basket half filled with blackberries so small they look embarrassed. Her fingers are stained purple, her lips too. She offers you one and you pop it into your mouth. Tart, sour, but real. Your stomach sighs. A quirky tidbit, some hobos swore by recipes for weed pie, stuffing dandelion greens and wild onions into a crust of whatever flour or cornmeal they could scrounge. Others roasted cacti, roots like potatoes, claiming they tasted almost edible. You imagine yourself roasting weeds and can't decide whether to laugh or cry. You crouch to join the foragers, pulling weeds with clumsy fingers. Hunger sharpens your patience. The earth is damp and your knees soak quickly, but the thrill of finding something edible, anything edible, pushes you on. A boy beside you whispers, "Careful with those berries, some'll kill you." His eyes gleam with the seriousness of a knight guarding treasure. You freeze, then grin nervously, wondering if your purple-stained tongue is already signing your death warrant. Historians still argue whether hobos shared accurate botanical knowledge or just rumors passed around fires. Some memoirs recall whole groups poisoned by bad mushrooms. Others describe decades of survival on weeds alone. Truth flickers between extremes, like sunlight through leaves. A man in teal demonstrates by chewing a sprig of lamb's quarters, nodding like a wine connoisseur. "Nutty," he declares. You try one and nearly gag. Bitter, sharp, like spinach that hates you. Yet you swallow anyway, and your body hums faint approval. Even bitterness becomes sustenance when you've got nothing else. 3 light jokes bubble to the surface as you chew. First, congratulations, you're now officially a cow chewing weeds by the river. Second, as your tongue curls at the bitterness, you mutter, "This flavour is called despair with notes of dirt." Third, spotting the boy spitting out a berry, you grin. Well, at least you didn't invent the first lethal smoothie. The baskets fill slowly. The woman with the blackberries hums softly, perhaps remembering the music from last night. Another man drops handfuls of wild onions into a sack, their sharp smell cutting the morning air. The group laughs when one onion makes a man's eyes water so badly he curses and sneezes. Even in hunger, comedy thrives. You realize how much knowledge hides here. Which weeds feed, which poison, which berries heal, which kill. Knowledge as Ishus's coins once were. You picture it being passed like relics, whispered advice, careful gestures, baskets shown proudly to newcomers. This is their grocery aisle, their apothecary, their lifeline. By midday, the group gathers by the fire. The harvest is meagre. 2 baskets of greens, a scattering of berries, a sack of onions. Someone dumps them into a pot with water. Soon steam rises, carrying the sharp smell of onion stew. It's not hearty, but it's hot, and when a ladle of it lands in your tin cup, you cradle it like treasure. The first sip is harsh, the bitterness of weeds sharp against your tongue, but the warmth spreads, filling the hollow in your belly. The blackberries float like jewels, adding rare sweetness. You sip slowly, stretching each mouthful into a luxury. Historians debate whether such foraging meals truly sustained hobos or just staved off starvation. Nutritionally, weeds alone could never provide enough calories, but psychologically, they gave something crucial: the illusion of choice. A man who plucks his dinner from the earth feels more in control than one waiting in a soup line. After eating, you lean back against a tree, drowsy. The sun dapples through the branches, the river gurgles, and the camp murmurs with conversation. A man tells a story of finding wild honey, fighting off bees to steal the comb. Another describes chewing pine bark. Tastes like Christmas, he jokes. A woman recalls boiling acorns until the bitterness bled away, turning them into flour. Survival, you realize, isn't just about calories. It's about inventing stories that make those calories worth chasing. 3 more jokes slip through your mind, softer this time. First, nature's buffet, open all day, just don't expect dessert. Second, weed pie, the only meal where garnish is the entree. Third, as a man gnaws cattail root, you grin. Congratulations, you're now a fishet. Leapart beaver. The camp settles into a lull. Some nap in the grass, bellies soothed for the moment. Others string greens to dry in the sun. You lie back, watching the sky, listening to the distant whistle of a train. Your stomach is far from satisfied, but it no longer claws at you. Foraging has given you just enough strength to move forward. Historians may argue forever about whether hobos were victims or innovators, reckless or resourceful. Sitting here with the taste of weeds still sharp on your tongue, you feel the truth. They were both. Victims of hunger, innovators of survival, reckless enough to eat banana peels, resourceful enough to make them edible. The train whistle grows louder. You rise, dusting dirt from your knees, tin cup clinking at your side. The rails call again. The weeds will grow back for others. Your path lies forward. You glance once more at the camp where laughter and smoke mingle, then step back to the tracks. Your belly is half full, your spirit half lifted, and half is enough to keep walking. The whistle fades as you press onward, but the weeds and berries linger on your tongue like ghosts of a meal. The day grows hot, your coat heavy, your boots dragging. By the time you reach the town's edge, you crave more than food. You crave shade, silence, and a roof that doesn't flap in the wind. That's when you spot the stone steps of a large building, its tall windows glimmering like quiet eyes. The carved letters above the door read, "Public Library." You hesitate at the entrance. Part of you feels out of place, dirt-stained and ragged, but another part whispers that books don't care what your boots look like. You push the heavy door and the smell of dust, leather and paper washes over you. Cool air brushes your face, gentler than any breeze outside. Mainstream historical fact: libraries became havens for the unemployed during the Depression. With free access to books, warmth in winter, and sometimes even bathrooms, they offered relief from both hunger and despair. Many men and women spent entire days inside reading newspapers to look for work or simply escaping reality in the pages of fiction. You shuffle past rows of polished tables where a few readers hunch over newspapers. Their clothes are as threadbare as yours, though here everyone pretends not to notice. You take a seat in a corner, sliding onto a chair so smooth it squeaks under your weight. A ray of sunlight filters through the high window, dust motes drifting like golden snow. On the nearest shelf, spines whisper promises, history, science, novels, poetry. You reach for one at random, a volume of Mark Twain. The paper is thin, the ink faint, but as you open the pages, the outside world falls away. Twain's river rolls through your imagination, and suddenly you're no longer a hobo with empty pockets. You're floating down the Mississippi with Huck and Jim, free in a way even the rails can't offer. A quirky tidbit: some hobos claimed libraries saved their sanity, giving them a place to sit undisturbed all day. Others joked that they ate words instead of bread. You understand that joke now. Your belly still growls, but your mind is feasting. Historians still argue whether libraries were sanctuaries or simply tolerated nuisances filled with idlers. City records show some librarians resented the influx of ragged men napping in reading chairs. Others welcomed them warmly, offering kindness and quiet respect. You don't know which kind of librarian works here, but no one has shooed you out yet. That feels like a blessing. The hours drift. You turn pages, devouring words like meals. Twain gives way to Shakespeare, Shakespeare to newspapers. The headlines scream of bank failures, droughts and protests. You sigh, folding the paper shut. Escape is fragile, but at least for a few hours, it was real. 3 light jokes slip into your head as you sit there. First, congratulations, you've just discovered the cheapest vacation package ever. 1 book, $0, unlimited destinations. Second, as your stomach growls mid-Shakespeare, you mutter, to eat or not to eat, that is the question. Third, glancing at a dozing man beside you, mouth wide open, you grin, and thus the noble art of library snoring was perfected. Eventually your eyes ache, your stomach wins the argument, and you close the book. The light outside has shifted, the library growing dim in the late afternoon glow. You stretch, bones cracking, and savor the silence one last time. At the door, you pause. The cool marble floor under your boots feels like an anchor, urging you to stay. But you know you can't. The rails are waiting, and hunger will not let you sleep in the warmth of stories forever. Outside, the heat slaps you again. The smell of dust and smoke replaces the scent of old paper. You squint against the sun, already longing for the hush of that room. Yet something has changed inside you. The rails may give you movement, the soup lines may give you broth, but the library has given you words. Words weigh nothing, yet they fill more than a stomach ever could. Historians debate endlessly whether the Depression stripped people of dignity or revealed hidden reserves of it. Leaving the library, you feel a scrap of dignity return. You may have no coin, but you carry Twain and Shakespeare in your mind, tucked as carefully as bread crusts in your coat pocket. You walk back to the tracks with a new rhythm in your step. The sky bruises into twilight, stars prick the horizon, and you hum softly. It isn't a tune from the fiddle or harmonica. It's a cadence borrowed from Twain's River, Shakespeare's verse, headlines of protest, all stitched into something that belongs to you now. 3 final jokes settle on your lips as you march. First, today's menu: breakfast of weeds, dinner of words, balanced diet. Second, as you picture yourself explaining this to future generations, you laugh. Yeah, kids, Grandpa survived the Depression on soup and sonnets. Third, recalling the dozing man in the library, you smirk. At least one hobo found the cure for insomnia. Dickens. The rails gleam faintly in the dark, a silver thread calling you back. Your belly is empty, but your mind is full. And for a wanderer in the Great Depression, sometimes that balance is the only reason to keep moving. The twilight deepens into a bruised purple as you step back onto the rails. The echo of library silence still clings to your thoughts, but your stomach reminds you it has no patience for poetry. Hunger growls louder than memory. You quicken your pace toward the edge of town where smoke curls from chimneys and the smell of hay and manure drifts on the air. A farmyard lies ahead, and with it the chance of work. Pennywork hustles, the sort that keep you moving for another day. Mainstream historical fact: during the Great Depression, odd jobs became lifelines. Hobos chopped wood, cleaned barns, harvested crops, or hauled water for a dime or a meal. Payment wasn't always cash. Sometimes it was a plate of stew or a bed of straw. But even small earnings mattered when every penny stretched impossibly far. You step cautiously into the farmyard, boots crunching over gravel. A man in a teal work shirt is stacking firewood, his axe buried in a log. He squints at you, eyes wary. You lift your hand in a half wave. Need some help? You ask, voice hoarse but steady. Silence stretches. Finally, he jerks his head toward the pile. Split and stack, dinner after. Relief floods your chest. You grab the axe, its handle smooth with years of calluses, and plant your feet wide. The first swing bites clean, splitting the log with a crack that echoes through the yard. You grin despite the ache in your arms. For once, your labor feels purposeful. A quirky tidbit, many hobos carried small toolkits, a hammer, a file, or even a pocket knife so they could trade skills along the road. Some became known in certain towns for particular talents. A man handy with fences, another skilled at shoe mending, a woman who could sew coats from old flour sacks. You wish you had more than weary arms, but today strength is enough. The farmer's children peek from the porch as you work. One boy giggles each time a log splits, clapping like it's a magic trick. Sweat runs down your back, soaking your shirt, but you keep swinging. Hours blur into the rhythm of chop, lift, stack. The pile grows tall, your muscles burn, and at last the farmer nods in approval. Historians still argue whether hobos were viewed as threats or saviors to rural families. Some accounts tell of farmers grateful for cheap labor. Others describe hostility and suspicion. Tonight, you feel tolerated, maybe even respected. When the farmer's wife calls you inside, you follow with gratitude. The farmhouse smells of bread and onions. You sit at the table, careful not to scuff the polished wood, and she sets a plate before you. Stew thick with carrots and potatoes. A slice of bread still warm from the oven. You nearly weep. The first bite scalds your tongue, but you chew slowly, savoring every texture. The bread crunches. The stew coats your throat. It is not just food. It is proof that your labor still has value. 3 light jokes flicker through your mind as you eat. First, finally a restaurant where the price of admission is sore muscles. Second, as you mop the last stew with bread, you mutter, Michelin star, awarded for the bread alone. Third, glancing at the boy still watching you wide-eyed, you grin. Kid thinks I'm Paul Bunyan with a depression discount. After dinner, the farmer leads you to the barn. Straw's clean, he says. You nod, grateful, and collapse into the fragrant pile. The rustle of hay beneath you feels softer than any mattress. You pull your coat tight and close your eyes, stomach full, muscles sore but satisfied. For a few hours you're not drifting, you're resting. In the dark, your thoughts wander. How many men and women wander the country tonight, trading sweat for stew? How many find doors slammed in their faces, dogs unleashed on their heels? Historians still debate whether these penny hustles preserved dignity or degraded it. You know the answer lies somewhere between. Tonight, chopping wood earned you both a meal and a shred of pride. Tomorrow, it may earn only blisters. The barn creaks in the night wind. Cows shuffle, their warm breath steaming. You smile faintly at the absurd comfort of animals for roommates. Your belly is full, your head heavy, and you drift into dreams where logs split themselves, where bread never hardens, where work and reward always meet. When dawn breaks, the farmer shakes you awake gently. He hands you a dime, worn smooth, and a small apple. For the road, he mutters. You thank him, words clumsy but sincere. That dime feels heavy in your palm, like a coin minted from hope itself. It might buy a train ticket for a few miles, or maybe a sandwich. It might be useless tomorrow, but today it matters. 3 more jokes slip in as you pocket the dime. First, a dime richer, a lifetime poorer. Call it balanced budgeting. Second, as you bite into the apple, you chuckle. Better savor this. Apples don't fall from trees when you're broke. Third, looking back at the woodpile, you grin. Somewhere in history, that pile will be called the Great Depression Monument to my sore back. You step back onto the rails, dime in pocket, apple in hand, coat smelling faintly of hay. The sun rises, gilding the tracks in gold. For once, the future doesn't feel entirely empty. Work may be fleeting, but it proves you're not invisible. You can still trade effort for sustenance, still earn your place at a stranger's table. Historians may argue whether the hobos were resourceful or burdensome, but tonight's woodpile whispers the truth. You are both. A burden to those with more, a resource when hands are needed. You straddle that line with every swing of the axe, every crust of bread, every dime dropped into your palm. You take a bite of the apple, tart juice running down your chin, and laugh softly. One dime, one apple, one sore back, and for today, that is enough to keep you walking. The dime jingles softly in your pocket as you leave the farm behind, but it might as well be a gold nugget. You keep fingering it as you walk the rails, imagining all the things it could buy: half a loaf of bread, a night's bed at a flop house, maybe even 2 hot coffees if the proprietor is feeling generous. But coins don't cure every ache. Hunger you can fight with scraps. Illness, though, that's another monster entirely. By midday, your throat scratches raw and your chest aches with every cough. You know you're not the only one. Hobos talk about sickness the way gamblers talk about dice. Sometimes you win a stretch of good health. Sometimes you throw snake eyes and collapse beside the tracks. You pass through another camp near a bridge, and here the topic is loud in every cough, every whispered trade. Miracle tonics, balms and cures sold from battered suitcases or tin cans. Mainstream historical fact: traveling medicine men roamed Depression-era roads offering cheap treatments for coughs, fevers and aches. Some had real medical knowledge. Many peddled little more than alcohol or flavoured water. To the desperate, any promise of healing was worth a dime or two. At the edge of the camp stands a cart shaded with a patched canvas tarp. Its owner, a tall man in a faded indigo coat, shouts promises into the smoky air. Step right up. Elixir of vitality, tonic for the lungs, cure for fatigue and despair. His cart rattles with bottles of green, amber and red liquid, each stoppered with wax. The crowd murmurs, half skeptical, half hopeful. You approach cautiously, clutching your dime. The man notices and winks, as if sensing your hesitation. One sip, friend, and you'll feel strong enough to wrestle bulls and dance with angels. His voice has the practiced rhythm of a stage actor. A quirky tidbit: hobos often joked that some of these tonics cured nothing but sobriety. Many bottles were little more than alcohol spiked with herbs, sold under names like Snake Oil Remedy or Doctor's Marvelous Elixir. Still, they warmed the body, soothed throats, and sometimes dulled pain, small mercies when you had nothing else. You trade the dime reluctantly and receive a bottle the size of your thumb. Its label is half-ripped but still boasts universal cure-all. You pop the cork and sniff. The scent smacks of peppermint, licorice, and something sharper. Alcohol, no doubt. The first swallow burns like fire, then cools your throat. For a moment, the ache eases. Historians still argue whether these travelling doctors were predators or benefactors. Some took advantage of desperation. Others, despite their theatrics, genuinely helped with herbal remedies or simple advice. You stare at the bottle in your hand, undecided. Snake oil or salvation? Maybe both. Around the cart, the scene buzzes with stories. A woman swears the tonic cured her fever last winter. A man scoffs, claiming it only emptied his wallet. Another shrugs. Better than nothing. You sip again, the warmth spreading to your fingertips, and realize they're all right. 3 light jokes bubble into your weary brain. First, congratulations, you've just paid a dime for spicy water. Second, as the alcohol burns your throat, you think, if nothing else, at least my cough is now drunk. Third, watching the salesman bow theatrically, you grin. Ladies and gentlemen, behold the Depression's first stand-up comedian disguised as a doctor. The salesman pockets your dime, tips his indigo hat and moves on, wagon creaking. You cough once more, softer now, and pocket the bottle. Whether it works or not, it feels like armor in your coat. Later you sit with the others around a low fire. One man shows a scar where he cut his leg hopping a freight. Another unwraps a bandaged arm, the wound raw and angry. They argue over whether to pour tonic on it or drink it instead. A chorus of laughter follows. Desperation and humor walk hand in hand here. A lanky traveler in saffron pipes up with a rhyme. Elixir green, elixir red, drink it down or end up dead. Cure your cough or cure your fear. Either way, the cost is dear. The camp chuckles, spoons rattling in tin cups. You smile too, though your chest still aches. Historians debate whether these gatherings around tonics and doctors were rituals of hope or cautionary tales. Did they reveal gullibility or resilience? As you sip the fiery liquid again, you lean toward resilience. Even false cures carry truth, the truth that people will cling to anything that keeps them moving another mile. Night drapes itself across the camp, stars glittering overhead. Fires die down, but the chatter lingers. You lie back against your rolled coats, bottle tucked under your arm like a talisman. The burn in your chest has faded for now, replaced by a fuzzy warmth. 3 more jokes surface as your eyelids droop. First, side effects may include optimism, hiccups, and regretting this in the morning. Second, as someone snores nearby, you chuckle. Guess the tonic's strongest cure is boredom. Third, swirling the last sip in your bottle, you grin. If this is medicine, then I'm a king's physician. You drift into sleep, half comforted, half wary. Tomorrow the cough may return, the bottle may prove worthless, and the bulls may prowl again. But tonight, the tonic has brought you something rarer than health. It has brought you belief, however temporary. The tonic bottle lies empty by morning, its cork rolled into the grass like a forgotten coin. Your cough lingers faint but softer, and whether that's the alcohol or your imagination, you decide not to question it. The camp begins to stir. Boots scraping, fires rekindled, laughter faint but stubborn. Yet as you pack your coat and tin cup, your thoughts drift elsewhere. You haven't seen your family in months, maybe longer. The road stretches on, but your heart aches for something beyond food or work. It aches for connection. You remember the stack of postcards you carry, creases worn, corners soft as cloth. They live tucked in your coat pocket, written but never sent. Today, you decide, one will finally find its way. Mainstream historical fact. Many hobos stayed in touch with families through postcards or letters, though not always consistently. Some feared admitting failure, others didn't know where their families had moved, but the postal service remained one of the few reliable connections to stability. You walk into town by mid-morning, boots heavy with dust. The post office stands squat on the main street, its flag drooping in the summer heat. You pause outside, nerves tightening. Will your words matter? Will they even reach anyone? You shake your head and push the door. Inside, the air is cooler, thick with the smell of ink and paper. Behind the counter, a clerk in a crisp indigo vest eyes you carefully, clearly clocking your ragged coat and travel-worn boots. You keep your head high, digging into your pocket until your fingers find a battered postcard. The image is faded, Niagara Falls in sepia, but the back is blank, waiting. You sit at a wooden writing desk by the window, stub of a pencil in hand. Your fingers tremble as you press the lead to paper. Dear Mama, you begin. The words trickle slowly at first, then spill. You write about the rails, about soup lines, about finding kindness in shanty towns. You don't mention the bulls or the hunger too sharply. You soften the edges, but you let some truth show through. I'm still walking, still breathing, still thinking of home. A quirky tidbit. Some hobos created their own coded language in letters using metaphors or invented phrases to hint at conditions without alarming families. The crops are lean might mean no jobs. The wind is harsh could mean police were unfriendly. You debate adding such phrases but decide against it. You want your words plain. When you finish, your throat tightens. The page is smudged with sweat, maybe a tear. You lick the envelope shut and place your precious dime, your farm-earned dime, on the counter. The clerk stamps the card, drops it into the outgoing slot. Just like that, part of you is heading home even if your boots keep moving. Historians still argue whether these letters mattered in the grand scheme of survival. Did they change outcomes? Did families find comfort? Or were they just words floating into the void, unanswered? You decide it doesn't matter. The act of writing has steadied you. It's proof you exist, proof you belong to someone beyond the rails. Stepping outside, the town feels brighter. You imagine your mother, weeks from now, pulling your card from the mailbox. Maybe she'll smile faintly, maybe she'll cry, maybe she'll curse you for vanishing in the first place, but she'll know you're alive. That's enough. 3 light jokes rise in your thoughts as you walk. First, congratulations, you've just invented Instagram, 1 faded postcard at a time. Second, as you picture your sloppy handwriting, you grin. Future historians will think I was drunk, not broke. Third, imagining your mother frowning at the banana peel stew description, you chuckle. She'll probably send me a cookbook with a note. You're doing it wrong. The rails wait at the edge of town, glinting faintly in the sun. You walk slower than usual, heart still heavy with words left unsaid. You think of your father, his stern jaw, his silence when money grew short. You wonder if he'd laugh or sigh at your wandering. You think of siblings, cousins, people you haven't seen in years. Do they wonder the same about you? By evening, you find another camp by the tracks. Fires glow, tin cups clink, voices murmur. You sit apart, pulling another postcard from your pocket, not to send, just to write, to ease the weight inside. You scribble under the flicker of flame. Tonight the rails hum like lullabies. The stars look close enough to touch. Maybe you can see the same stars. Maybe that's our thread across the miles. You tuck the card away, unsent but not wasted. Words are food too, just not for the belly. Historians debate whether hobos were chroniclers or mere ghosts of the Depression. So many left little behind, except scraps of letters, chalk marks, and faded stories. You feel the truth in your bones. Even scraps matter. A postcard, a word, a memory. They stitch you to the world. The night deepens. You roll into your coat, the scent of hay and tonic still clinging. Stars wheel overhead, bright as coins, unreachable but present. Somewhere your card rides a mail sack toward home. Somewhere your family might one day touch the paper your hand touched. That's enough to carry you into sleep. 3 more jokes drift with your dreams. First, postage is cheaper than therapy, though probably less effective. Second, as you imagine your father reading aloud, you chuckle. Family meeting. Guess who learned to write like a chicken? Third, your eyes close, lips curling. If love could be mailed, it'd still arrive postage due. You fall asleep smiling faintly, heart lighter than your belly. For tonight, you're more than a wanderer. You're a voice on paper, travelling farther than your boots ever will. The night passes in restless pockets of sleep, your dreams tangled with visions of letters flying like birds toward home. When morning comes, the camp already hums. Men and women stir ashes back into flames, voices weaving gossip and laughter into the chill air. As you sit up, stretching your sore back, you overhear introductions crackling through the firelight. Names are traded, but not the ones mothers once gave. One man claps another on the shoulder. "Morning, Whiskers." Across the circle, someone answers, "Professor, you talk too much." Another chuckles. "Quiet down, Kansas kid." The camp is alive with nicknames, hobo names, strange badges of honor earned along the rails. Mainstream historical fact: hobos often took on colorful nicknames, abandoning birth names for identities forged on the road. Names might come from appearance, red shirt, skills, cookie, origins, Iowa Slim, or quirks, Laughing Jack. These monikers created a sense of community and masked true identities, protecting both pride and privacy. A tall man with a teal scarf nods at you. "You new? Don't look like a Whiskers yet. Too clean-shaven. We'll call you Boots until you earn better." The circle laughs, not unkindly. You smile, accepting the title like a secret initiation. Boots. You've been worse things. A quirky tidbit. Some hobos collected their nicknames proudly, introducing themselves with a string of them. "I'm Shorty, though they called me Owl in Denver, and back in 29, I was Pinecone Pete." Others wore a single moniker their whole lives, etched onto boxcars and whispered across jungles. One man supposedly named himself the King of the Road, decades before the song ever existed. As the fire pops, the nicknames grow wilder. Sawhorse boasts about carrying 3 planks on his back. Professor, true to his title, Beggy, ins a lecture about the Roman Empire until everyone groans. Whiskers pulls at his beard and says he once shaved it, but the nickname stuck anyway. The laughter that follows is genuine, warm as stew. Historians still argue whether these names were masks of shame or symbols of belonging. Were they ways to hide poverty or ways to claim identity in a world that tried to erase it? You listen to the banter and suspect both. The teal-scarved man turns to you. "So, Boots, what's your story? You got a family? A trade?" You shrug, unwilling to share too much, but you say enough. You can chop wood, swing an axe, write a postcard. That earns nods. "Boots the writer," someone quips, and the group howls. You laugh with them, cheeks warm in the firelight. 3 light jokes spring to your mind. First, forget birth certificates. Apparently all you need is a good beard or a bad habit to get a name here. Second, as Professor drones about Julius Caesar, you mutter, "Et tu, brute?" More like "Et tu, broke." Third, hearing Sawhorse brag again, you grin. If he carried 1 more plank, they'd call him Entire Hardware Store. Later that day, you walk with the group toward the tracks, names echoing in the air. It feels like a parade of aliases, each one carrying its own legend. Whiskers struts, Professor lectures, Kansas Kid whistles off key. You trail behind, still adjusting to Boots. As you march, you realize something. Names here aren't just jokes, they're shields. Out on the rails, your real name ties you to debts, shame, or memories too heavy to carry. But a hobo name? That's freedom. It lets you start fresh in every jungle, every campfire, every soup line. Historians debate whether hobo names created unity or fostered anonymity that fractured bonds. Did they bind strangers as brothers or prevent true trust? As you listen to Sawhorse spin another tall tale, you think trust doesn't need birth names. Trust grows from shared bread and laughter, from the sound of spoons clinking in tin cups. By evening, the camp reaches a river crossing, fires spring up again, and names multiply. A woman who patches socks with extraordinary speed is christened Needles. A boy who can whistle bird calls becomes Sparrow. Everyone laughs, everyone plays along. You grin, realizing that you've slipped into the rhythm, no longer an outsider but another voice in the chorus. The firelight paints faces in flickering gold. Boots, Professor, Whiskers, Sawhorse, Needles, Sparrow, a roll call of survival. Not a census, not a payroll, but a living poem of invention. 3 more jokes whisper through your tired mind as you watch them. First, this isn't just a camp, it's the Great Depression's first comic book lineup. Second, as Sparrow whistles off key again, you smirk. Marvel would fire him instantly. Third, as you stretch your legs by the fire, you murmur, "Boots may not be glamorous, but at least no one called me Banana Peel." The stars rise overhead, sharp and bright. You lie back, coat pulled tight, and listen to the nicknames echo one by one in the night. Each is both silly and sacred, a badge of belonging in a world that tries to strip names away. Historians may forever argue about whether hobos were nameless wanderers or legendary characters, but here under these stars, you know the truth. They were both. Real names faded into shadows, replaced by nicknames that stitched laughter into hunger. You close your eyes, smiling faintly. Tomorrow you'll still be Boots, and that's enough. The camp wakes with nicknames still buzzing like flies, but as the sun climbs higher and bellies rumble again, laughter shifts into storytelling. It begins with Professor, naturally, his indigo scarf flapping like a banner as he gestures grandly. "Let me tell you," he declares, "about the time I wrestled a bull off the rail yard in Kansas City and lived to whistle about it." Groans rise, spoons rattle against tin cups, and already you know the story will stretch taller than the camp's fire smoke. Mainstream historical fact: storytelling was a staple of hobo culture. Around fires, travelers swapped not just news, but yarns, some true, some invented, some impossibly exaggerated. These tales helped pass time, bond strangers, and build a shared folklore of the road. Professor's story unfolds like a carnival ride. He describes the bull as a mountain in uniform, eyes glowing red, club the size of a church pew. He claims he dodged one swing, leapt onto a freight car ladder, and rode away laughing while the bull cursed in 3 languages. The crowd howls with laughter, knowing it's nonsense but savouring every word. A quirky tidbit: hobos often competed in yarn-spinning contests, trying to outdo one another in ridiculousness. Tall tales became a kind of social currency, and a man's reputation might rest more on his storytelling flair than on truth. The goal wasn't accuracy, but amusement, and nobody minded if facts evaporated like morning mist. After Professor bows dramatically, Whiskers takes his turn. He claims he once outwitted a farmer's dog by singing lullabies until it fell asleep. He even mimics the growling, then the snoring, drawing, roaring laughter. Someone mutters, "That mutt probably just fainted from his singing," and the camp collapses into wheezing giggles. Historians still argue whether these tales reveal resilience or delusion. Were hobos inventing gens to mask misery, or simply crafting joy out of nothing? You lean toward both. Laughter feeds where bread cannot. Your own belly shakes as Sawhorse launches into his tale of chopping wood so fast sparks flew, accidentally starting a forest fire. "The whole town tried to hire me after that," he boasts. "Best advertising I ever had." You grin, nearly choking on your sip of water. 3 light jokes bounce through your mind while you listen. First, if lying were a trade, these men would be millionaires. Second, as Sawhorse mimics flames with wild arm flaps, you mutter, "And here we witness the birth of interpretive dance." Third, when Whiskers insists his beard scared off bandits, you chuckle, "Behold the first anti-theft facial hair." As dusk drapes itself over the camp, the stories grow wilder. A woman named Needles claims she once sewed an entire tent from flour sacks in a single night. Sparrow brags about falling from a moving boxcar and surviving by landing on a hay wagon. Each tale grows taller, each laugh louder, until the campfire itself seems to sway with the weight of imagination. The firelight paints faces in flickers of gold and shadow. You realize these stories, absurd though they are, stitch something larger. They transform hunger into humor, fear into folklore. They make legends out of nobodies. Historians debate whether hobo tales influenced later American folklore, seeping into songs, books, and even tall tale heroes like Paul Bunyan or Pecos Bill. Some say yes, others dismiss the idea. But sitting here, listening to Whiskers claim he once rode a freight train backward just to confuse the bulls, you feel like you're watching folklore being born in real time. Someone nudges you. "Boots," they say, "your turn." The circle stares, expectant. You swallow, throat dry, and scramble for a tale. You decide honesty dressed in exaggeration will do. Once, you begin slowly. "I ate a stew so thin, I had to chase the flavor around with a spoon. When I finally caught it," you pause dramatically. "It bit me back." The circle erupts. Laughter tumbles like logs in a flood. "That stew again," someone cries, wiping tears. You grin, cheeks burning but proud. Your first hobo yarn, absurd but welcome. 3 more jokes tumble out as the laughter fades. First, "Congratulations, you've just published your debut novel." Working title, "The Soup That Fought Back." Second, as Whiskers slaps your back, you think, "Some legends are born from stew, not steel." Third, when Sparrow whistles approval, you grin. "Guess I'll add comedian boots to my resume." The night grows late. The story's slower. Voices fade into murmurs, yawns, and the crackle of dying fire. You lie back, coat pulled close, still smiling. The stars blur overhead, but the laughter lingers in your ears like music. Historians may forever argue whether these legends matter, but here, wrapped in smoke and story, you know they do. They are more than lies. They are survival. Invention itself becomes sustenance, a shield against despair. You close your eyes, drifting towards sleep. The stew still bites playfully in your dreams, and the rails hum with tall tales waiting to be told tomorrow. Morning creeps in with pale gold lights spilling across the camp. The fire has burned down to grey ash, and the air smells of damp wood and smoke clinging to coats. You stir awake, still grinning faintly at last night's stew story. But a different mood hangs heavy now. The laughter has ebbed, replaced by quiet murmurs. Someone pokes the fire half-heartedly. Another folds his blanket with more care than energy. Saint, retelling has turned into reflection, and reflection always tastes more bitter than stew. Across the circle, Professor clears his throat. "You know," he says, "someday they'll write about us. But they'll make us saints or scoundrels, never the real thing." The group nods, the silence thick. You realize he's right. Even now, newspapers call hobos either lazy vagrants or romantic wanderers. Never both, never human. Mainstream historical fact. During and after the Depression, hobo life was often romanticized in songs, poems, and art. The reality was grimmer: hunger, violence, and danger. But the myth of the free wanderer endured, shaping American culture for decades. Whiskers snorts, tugging at his beard. "I read in a paper once we're knights of the rails." Knights? Ha, last time I checked, knights didn't eat onion skin soup. Laughter ripples, but it's thin, brittle. You feel the sting beneath his sarcasm. Knights wore armor, hobos wear rags. A quirky tidbit: some hobos leaned into this romantic image, writing poems or carving woodwork that depicted themselves as noble adventurers. Others despised it, insisting it erased the misery. The debate echoes tonight by the river, where truth and myth wrestle like tired dogs. You sit quietly, watching the fire. The myth has its allure. Who wouldn't rather imagine themselves a noble wanderer than a hungry drifter? But the truth presses too close to ignore. Your boots are worn thin, your stomach is a hollow drum, Your coat reeks of smoke. Myth alone won't keep you alive. Historians still argue whether America's fascination with hobos was compassion or escapism. Did people romanticize them to ease guilt, or because they secretly longed for freedom from mortgages and bosses? You lean toward both. People crave heroes, even if they have to carve them from hunger. The teal-scarved man sighs, staring into the embers. Maybe someday kids will sit in classrooms and hear stories of us and they'll think it was all adventure. They won't smell the smoke or feel the bull's clubs. His voice cracks and the circle falls silent. 3 light jokes tumble into your head, desperate to break the weight. First, if we're knights, then where's my horse? Last I checked, I've only got splinters from boxcars. Second, as you glance at your patched coat, you grin shining armor, more like shining grease stains. Third, hearing Professor mutter again, you think maybe I should adopt a crest. 2 crossed spoons over a soup pot. Still, the silence doesn't lift. The fire spits weakly, a sound too small for such heavy thoughts. You lean back and look at the sky where clouds drift lazily, careless of rails or hunger. You wonder what future eyes will see when they glance back at this era. Will they see knights, beggars, survivors? One woman, Needles, begins stitching a coat by firelight, needle flashing like a sword in her hand. She mutters, "Let them call us what they want, we know the truth." Her voice steadies the group. Laughter doesn't return, but something stronger does. Defiance. You realize myths aren't entirely lies. They're armor against despair. The truth may be hunger, but the myth says freedom. The truth may be violence, but the myth says resilience. Somewhere between the two, life survives. Historians debate endlessly whether the myth of the hobo poisoned memory or preserved dignity. Sitting here, you understand, it did both. Myths don't erase suffering. They reshape it, give it a costume that lets people look without flinching. As night deepens, you roll into your coat. The camp hums with softer voices, no tall tales tonight, just reflections, truths whispered in firelight. You close your eyes, letting the debate swirl around you like smoke. 3 more jokes help soften your drift to sleep. First, if they ever paint us as noble, I hope they don't forget to include the fleas. Second, imagining a future poet, you grin. O wondrous hobo, eater of weeds, rider of trains. Yeah, that'll sell tickets. Third, with a final sigh, you chuckle, Knights of the Rails. Fine, but someone better polish this armor before the moths finish it off. Your dreams that night are strange. You see yourself drawn on parchment, riding a train like a steed, crowned with a paper crown. Crowds cheer, but when you look down, your hands still clutch a dented tin cup. Myth and truth overlap, impossible to separate. You wake unsettled but alive, reminded that both stories, the shining and the ragged, will follow you until the rails end. The morning rises with a sullen grey sky, clouds hanging low like damp blankets stretched across the heavens. The camp moves slowly, voices subdued. Last night's talk of myths lingers, weighing on everyone heavier than hunger. You trudge toward the rails again, but soon the path bends into silence, carrying you to a place unlike the others, a clearing where wooden crosses jut from the earth, crooked and unadorned, a hobo graveyard. The air feels thicker here, each breath slower. Grass grows tall between the graves, but not tall enough to hide them. Some crosses lean at odd angles, weathered nearly smooth by rain and wind. Others bear faint carvings, initials, symbols, sometimes just a single name scratched by a trembling hand. You stop at the edge, boots rooted to the soil. The hush is deeper than the silence. Of any jungle, it is the silence of endings. Mainstream historical fact. Countless hobos died during the Great Depression, some from hunger, others from accidents while riding trains, and many from illness untreated. Burials were often simple, carried out by fellow travelers or sympathetic locals with wooden markers that rarely lasted more than a few seasons. Their names often vanished, leaving only anonymous mounds of earth. You step forward carefully as if afraid to disturb the ground. A nearby cross bears a crude carving. Jim, 1932. Nothing more. You wonder who carved it, whether Jim was loved or simply remembered for a night around a fire. Another grave has no name at all, only a rough circle etched into wood. A mark meant to mean something, but what? A quirky tidbit. Some hobos carried tiny notebooks where they recorded names of friends who had died, creating personal memorials. A few even claimed to mark boxcars with chalk symbols honoring the fallen, like rail-borne tombstones. The practice was never uniform, but the desire to remember lingered like smoke. You kneel by one grave, running your hand along the splintered wood. The initials are almost gone, but the effort is clear. Someone cared enough to mark this spot, even if time tries to erase it. You swallow, throat tight. The graveyard is proof that wanderers didn't vanish into myth, they vanished into soil, quietly, namelessly. Historians still argue about the scale of these losses. Records are sparse, numbers uncertain. Some claim tens of thousands died on the rails, others insist the figure is lower. The truth is slippery, like smoke escaping through fingers. But standing here, you realize the debate misses the point. Even one nameless grave is too many. A crow caws from a fence post, wings spreading wide. Its cry slices the hush, then fades, leaving the clearing heavier. You rise, boots sinking into damp soil, and walk deeper among the crosses. Some are fresh, wood still sharp. Others crumble when touched, falling back into earth. The passage of time feels crueler here, erasing lives twice, once in death, once in memory. 3 light jokes stumble through your head, less to amuse and more to keep despair from swallowing you. First, well, at least the landlords here don't raise the rent. Second, glancing at the crooked crosses, you mutter, the cemetery architect must have been paid in stew scraps. Third, spotting a patch of weeds sprouting beside a grave, you grin faintly. Looks like even the dead are contributing to tonight's salad. Still, the humor feels brittle. You sit on a fallen log, staring at the sea of nameless mounds. For once, you don't feel like a knight of the rails or a teller of tall tales. You feel like a man walking among echoes, one heartbeat away from being an echo yourself. You think of the postcard you sent home. Will it outlast you? Will your name at least touch your mother's hand before it vanishes into soil like Jim's? The thought presses hard. You touch the pocket where another unsent card waits. Maybe it's not just for your family. It's for whoever finds it later, proof you existed. The teal-scarved man from camp appears, his boots crunching softly behind you. He doesn't speak at first, just scans the crosses. Finally, he says, "They're part of the tribe, same as us. Doesn't matter that the world forgot their names. We remember them tonight." He kneels, places a pebble on a mound, and nods to you. Do the same. It's how we keep the line unbroken. You bend, pick up a small stone, smooth and cold, and place it on Jim's grave. The gesture is simple, but your chest loosens slightly. Maybe remembering doesn't mean grand statues or songs. Maybe it just means not walking past too quickly. Historians debate whether these little rituals mattered in the larger arc of the Depression to office. Files, perhaps not, but to you, kneeling there, it matters deeply. Ritual keeps despair from swallowing memory. The crow caws again, then lifts into the sky, black wings cutting through grey. You watch until it vanishes. The graveyard returns to silence, heavy but somehow steadier. 3 more jokes drift softly into your mind, almost like whispers from the graves themselves. First, if I go out here, somebody better mark me boots, wore 'em thin. Second, imagining Professor's grave, you grin, here lies the man who told one tale too many. Third, as the crow vanishes, you murmur, at least someone got a ticket out of here. You leave slowly, boots heavy, heart heavier. But behind you, the pebble on Jim's grave gleams faintly in the pale light, a small defiance against forgetting. The rails wait as always, stretching onward. You walk them with quieter steps now, carrying not just hunger or myth, but memory. The dead do not ride the trains anymore, but their silence rides with you. You leave the graveyard with the weight of silence still pressing against your chest. The rails gleam faintly under the dull sun, but they no longer feel like promises. They feel like threads unspooling, pulling you farther and farther from the names you once carried and the people you once loved. Every step crunches on gravel like a drumbeat saying, keep moving, but something in the air has shifted. The hobo tribe is thinning, the fire's dimming, the culture dissolving like chalk marks in the rain. Mainstream historical fact, by the late 1930s, as New Deal programs expanded and World War II created jobs, the wandering culture of hobos began to fade. The sheer necessity that had driven thousands onto the rails eased, and many returned to towns, families, or factories. The echoes of the lifestyle survived in songs and stories, but the living jungles and chalk marks dwindled. You notice it in every step you take. The camps are smaller, fewer. Fires that once burned bright now sputter low, if at all. The jokes are softer, the music rare. Even the nicknames sound tired, as if they know their days are numbered. You stop at a clearing where once a jungle sprawled, but now only a circle of blackened stones remains. The laughter, the stew, the fiddle tunes, they're gone, carried away by the wind. A quirky tidbit. Some hobos carved their nicknames into bridge timbers or boxcar walls, leaving marks like signatures on a world that would soon forget them. You spot one such carving, a jagged heart scratched into wood, inside it the name Sparrow. You trace the letters, wondering if Sparrow has settled somewhere, maybe with a wife and steady job, or if Sparrow lies under a crooked cross like Jim. Historians still argue whether the fading of hobo culture was a loss or a relief. Was it the end of a unique community, or simply the closing of a chapter too painful to continue? Standing here, the emptiness feels like both. The rails carry you onward into twilight. A train thunders past, but fewer riders cling to its sides. The bulls still patrol, but even their shouts seem less frequent, less ferocious. The rails are becoming emptier, lonelier. You realize the tribe is scattering, absorbed back into the folds of America, leaving only ghosts behind. 3 light jokes rise in your thoughts, though they wobble under the weight of the moment. First, if hobos vanish, who's going to keep the bulls in shape? They'll have to chase squirrels instead. Second, as you pass the empty fire ring, you smirk. Guess even jungles get tired of beans. Third, staring at the fading chalk marks, you murmur, 5-star Yelp review erased. What will the next traveller do? Night falls, and you sit alone by a cold trackside. No fire tonight, no circle of nicknames, just you, your coat, and the echo of songs hummed last week, last month, last year. The stars feel sharper, as if they're poking holes in the sky. You close your eyes, trying to imagine where the others have gone. Back to farms, maybe, to families, to warships soon enough. And you keep walking, though the tribe beneath your boots is dissolving. Historians debate whether hobos left any lasting impact beyond songs and legends. You think of the chalk marks, the tall tales, the stew recipes stretched beyond belief. Maybe the impact isn't in books or statues, but in survival itself. Every scrap of knowledge, how to boil weeds, how to dodge bulls, how to laugh at soup, was a gift passed hand to hand. Gifts don't need monuments, they need memory. You pull one last postcard from your pocket, the blank space staring back at you. You write, "Tonight the rails are quiet, the fires are ash, but we were here. We walked, we sang, we starved, we laughed. Don't forget us." You don't know if you'll ever send it, but you tuck it away anyway. Words are your campfire tonight. 3 more jokes soften the edges of your solitude. First, if history forgets us, maybe that's just mercy. No one has to taste mulligan stew again. Second, as your stomach growls, you grin. Survival diet, half weeds, half stories, full comedy. Third, hearing a train whistle far away, you whisper, "There goes the last free Uber ride of the depression." The night grows colder, and you curl into your coat. The rails hum faintly, but even they seem to sigh with exhaustion. You drift into sleep, not with the wild laughter of jungles, but with the quiet knowledge that you've been part of something, even if it's fading. And now, as your journey along the rails comes to its close, let the pace soften. The clatter of wheels and the crackle of campfires dissolve into distance, fading into the hush of night. Imagine the rails stretching endlessly, but no longer demanding your boots. They shimmer like silver threads across a darkened quilt, humming gently like a lullaby whispered from the past. The echoes of voices, Whiskers with his tall tales, Professor with his lectures, Sparrow with his whistle, grow fainter, blending into memory. Their laughter lingers just enough to remind you that even in hunger, people found ways to shine. You feel them fading, not vanishing like chalk marks washed by rain, but still faintly visible if you lean close. Your body loosens as you sink deeper into stillness. Shoulders unclench, breath slows, and the night wraps around you like a quilt stitched from smoke, stars, and quiet. The earth beneath you is steady, carrying the memory of thousands of footsteps. But for now, it asks nothing of you. No miles to walk, no dimes to earn, no bulls to dodge, only rest. The myth of the hobo may sparkle with romance, and the truth may ache with hunger, but together they weave a story large enough to hold you. You don't need to decide which is right. You only need to let the rails fade into silence, knowing you've walked them long enough. Close your eyes, let the last whistle drift far into the distance, and breathe with the rhythm of the earth itself, slow, steady, safe. The world may still turn restless above, but down here, by these quiet tracks, peace is waiting.